Well, welcome back. I took a little reprieve last weekend and explored the island, and it's quite beautiful, as you already know, so I'm glad to be back with you. So when I first started in ministry, a friend of mine shared a story with me that was helpful. She was in a ministry, and they were sort of challenging, shall we say. They were sort of, in the world, of the world, and out there, drinking and smoking and all those things we do when we forget who we are. And I've been there many times. So she decided to do a sermon on Sunday, and she thought, a demonstration would be best. And so she brought these canisters up to the front, and the first one was filled with alcohol. The second was cigarette smoke, and the third was chocolate, my favorite, and then good, clean soil. And so she said, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a live worm in each one of these canisters, and then we'll see what happens. So she went on with her talk and, described the body temple and how we want to treat it with reverence and respect, and, everything we put in our bodies should be sacred and holy and all those kinds of ideas. So when she finished, she said, okay, so let's see what happened to the worm. So she checks the first canister in the alcohol, and sure enough, the worm is dead. The second canister full of smoke, and sure enough, the worm is dead. She checks the third canister of chocolate, almost dead. It's not terrible. And the fourth canister is the good, clean soil, and it was a thriving, growing little worm. So she said, so what do you take from that, to the congregation? Maxine in the back, says, I know. If you drink, smoke, and what is it? If you drink, smoke, and eat chocolate, that's right, then you won't get worms. Which is right, what we do. We interpret life to mean everything, right? That's sort of what we do. We hear the truth or a story, and we interpret it according to our beliefs, according to what we're yearning for. And we all do that. Yeah. I was sharing with a friend who came in to visit, that she was sharing all of her credentials with me, and we started, talking about those letters that go behind our names. And I said, my most favorite one is Reverend Denese MSU. Makes stuff up. Right? Which is sort of what we all do. And just becoming real with that. My beautiful husband over there, we do that all the time consciously. Just sort of, we see something and we just start making up stories. And it's just really scary if we start believing those stories, right? But he's pretty creative. So every now and then I'm like diving in. Yeah, that's right. So this book is such an amazing book, as Reverend Levitt mentioned, and it's one of my most favorite books. And it really is the basic teachings of New Thought, of how to sort of awaken, how to use this life experience to move us along, and to not shrink from life, not to run from conflict, not to even see it or know it as bad, but to know that that's a natural part of our living, whether we're in an organization, whether we're in a relationship, or whether we're just in the world. It's just part of it. So the premise of the book is sort of a big frog to swallow, as they say. It's no one and nothing is against you. And there's a slide here that talks about no one and nothing is against you. Make your path about proving that truth, and you will discover what wholeness really is. And that's what we're talking about today. So this teacher, Muhru, that is up there, was Dr. Reverend Gary Simmons' teacher very early on, and in his ministerial career. And Gary speaks from an authentic awakening. Just briefly, he started off first in his class in school, ministerial school, and then got the biggest church with the most money, all of that stuff. And within 18 months, he was fired. His credentials got taken from him, and he was divorced. So he gets this whole idea. And this teacher showed up in the next ministry that he started with this idea that truly, Gary, no one and nothing is against you, and to use life circumstances to prove this to be true. Now, I know that this is sort of hard for many of us to take in because we have a lot of evidence against it. Yes? That there's something out there in somebody. But what I know is until we realize that the entire universe is for us, we will never experience our wholeness, our true worth. So the purpose of the book, Eye of the Storm, is really to awaken you to this truth. There is only one presence and one power, God, the good, omnipotent. So that is our statement of faith. It's the same as there's no one and nothing against you. It just sounds a little bit differently. But in this series, we're going to explore what that statement means for us. And so what we know is that God lives in us. The power of Spirit lives in us. And so therefore, no one can be against God. So we need to begin to move into this place of knowing that truth, knowing that truth. And the reality is, we come here or we go to a SEE class, where that's spiritual enrichment education, and we learn a lot of truth. We learn a lot of affirmations. We learn a lot of laws, principle laws. But the reality is, none of it matters if we don't have an experience of the divine. Yes? It's all a bunch of words. So until we have our own awakening and those principles awaken in us as the truth, we're just sort of walking along, singing the songs, happy, but we're not living as the Christ. And that's where I want to be, yes? Yes. Is living as the Christ. Living as the one who came here to awaken to my own divinity. Are you in? Yes, yes. That's what it's about. So this book can really help us to find a way to move through challenging moments. Because I'll tell you, when I got into ministry, I think I shared this with you, I seriously believed that because I was ordained and licensed, that the red carpet would roll out, and everywhere I'd go, they'd sing my praises, and it would just be so simple, and everything I said to you, you would just accept, and, I just thought it was just the best thing. And so anything unlike that would show up, and luckily, rather than running, I stayed, right? I'm not sure why, God, but I know I've been called here. Show me how to do this. Show me how to do this. And I have a beautiful husband that supports that. We support each other, yeah. When we forget who we are, and we still do that often, we remind each other, and that's what we can do in community when we come together. That's why we have those songs, come together. We come together to support each other on this journey of awakening. And this book can really support that idea as well. So how many of you ever have sometime in your life that you had to have life be a certain way in order for you to be okay? Anybody? Yeah. I think we've all had that experience. We had certain things that we just needed in order for us to be okay, whether it was a job or a relationship or an income or children or whatever that would be. We were certain that if that were not in our life, then we would be okay. Well, really, that's sort of an example of sourcing our discomfort outside of ourselves and our comfort are sourcing our good outside of ourselves, yes? That's, the codependency. We depend on someone else for us to feel good, right? Right. So we're getting now that we are the source of our good because God lives in us and around us. And so it's sort of what they call an inside job. It's an inside job. We're no longer needing someone out there to do that. And Myrtle Fillmore said, God is the only reality of us. God is the only reality of us. All else is but a shadow. So in the eye of the storm, this is sort of the precursor for the Q process, which we'll be doing in the fall. But it's sort of setting everything up and helping us see, yes, our divine. Yes, we want to bask in that. We want to look at that. We want to recognize our divine. But we also want to look at the other side when we're not so divine, that little shadow part. And so that's where Unity hasn't been quite as diligent in the work. And so that's where I came. Remember, I'm here to afflict the comfortable. Yes? So that's just good work. But in that, I don't say that in a mean way because it had to be afflicted in me as well. And that is that I had to sort of see that I was participating in this thing called life. I was participating in my own suffering. Right? Yes. That I was participating in my own suffering. And part of that is wanting to be right. Wanting to be right. Have you ever wanted to be right before? There's Benita back there. She's got both arms up. Yes. That's me. Thank you, Benita. Maxine and Benita are in the back. Yes. So who do we have to be in order to need to be right? Who do we have to be in order to need to be right? Think about that for a second. Say someone judges you and makes you the matter with them. You get triggered. You react. You show up with some explanation, some rationale, whatever position. But you're needing to be right. You're needing to be seen. But what's really going on underneath all that? Most likely what's underneath that is a sense of inadequacy, of not enough, of feeling a little unworthy. There's a great story that I found on the web, and it's an actual script from a naval ship with the Canadian authorities. And it was from 1995 out of the coast of Newfoundland. And it goes like this. The Canadians say, please divert your course 15 degrees to the south to avoid a collision. The Americans, we recommend that you divert your course 15 degrees to the north. The Canadians, negative. You have to divert your course 15 degrees to the south to avoid a collision. The Americans, this is the captain of the U.S. naval ship. And I'll say that again. Divert your course. The Canadians, no, you must divert your course. The Americans, this is the aircraft carrier USS Lincoln, the largest ship in the United States Atlantic Fleet. We are accompanied by 3 destroyers, 3 cruisers, and numerous support vessels. And I demand that you change your course 15 degrees. I'll say it again, 15 degrees, or countermeasures will be taken immediately. The Canadians, well, it's your choice. This is the lighthouse. Isn't that us, right? It's just like we just get into a story. We just get into a position. We just know we're right. We just, can't be moved. And it's just like, okay, darling. You get to crash one more time, right? So good. So Eckhart Tolle is a beautiful spiritual teacher, and he talks about the ego quite a bit in The New Earth. I love that book. Anybody else read that book? Yeah. If you haven't read it, it's quite profound. It's a beautiful teacher. In fact, that book got done on the Oprah show, 5-7 years? Probably 20 now. Everything goes back so fast. And it was mind-boggling. I was so excited because New Thought, went mainstream. Like, wow. So that was great. But he says the ego complains in order to strengthen itself. That it just complains to be right. It wants you to know how miserable it is. And I separate it from our true nature, yes. There's a part of us that has a persona, has an ego, and at some point that sort of has protected us to get through life. But it's not who we are. It's a persona we created to be in the world. But it's not always useful and helpful as we awaken and as we realize our oneness with God. It keeps us separate from everyone and everything, yes? Yes. So it's useful when it's healthy and it's not afraid. But most of the time, it is afraid, and it's always urging us to find safety. Beware. You're not safe. So this work is inviting us to really get and know that God knows that how your life looks and feels is not against you. That there's nothing in this world that can destroy who you really are. And I got a message years ago from Spirit when I was coaching and counseling a young man who was in his addiction. And I didn't know what to say. So in prayer, I just said, Spirit, please lead me. I don't know how to reach this young man. And here's what Spirit said. There is nothing you can do that can destroy the essence of who you really are. You can only postpone the awareness of your own magnificence. Yes? Yes. So the essence of us isn't this body or this persona or this ego. It is so much greater and bigger. And the sooner we're aware of our own magnificence, our divine self, the more we can get on of why we're here. And let's get over our little self. So all these distractions are only postponing the awareness of our awakened self, our most magnificent self. But we can never destroy who we really have come here to be, even in our addictions, even in our inhumaneness. And so for a lot of us, our discomfort comes from not remembering who we are. Today in our launch, we're going to have an idea about what that is personally. Who have I come here to be? What is that about? And so thinking about that sometimes our discomfort comes from our interpretation of life. It comes from this happens, and that's what this means. Well, I'm dating this person, he doesn't call me, and that means he doesn't want me, right? So all it means is he didn't call you. We make up the rest, right? Whatever that is, according to our belief about ourselves. So another example is we walk into a dark room and we see something on the floor coiled up. And if we have a fear of snakes, we might think that it's a snake. And that fear begins to take over the body, the mind, and the emotions. And in doing so, it floods the body with cortisol, a hormone that puts us in a state of panic. And hopefully we could flight faster with that cortisol. But it puts us in a place of danger, and it also sort of shuts down the mind. Have you noticed? When you're in that state, it's so hard to see or think clearly. Yes? Yes. Yes. So part of this work is learning to find our center again. The I am of the storm. The I am that I am has sent me here to this now moment. I am in the center of the storm. And the I am is the divine in me, is not wavering from any external circumstances. She knows who and what she is. That nothing can disturb the calm peace of my soul. That the external happening of the world can come and go, but I know who and what I am. And so in a moment of believing that that object in the room is a snake and reconnecting to source, we might ask, so I'm wondering what else this could be. And we might soften the eyes and the stomach releases, and we look more closely, we inquire, we get closer, and we recognize that it's not a snake, but just a rope. So suddenly, the snake transforms to a rope. Aren't we amazing? Right? We just transformed this thing we thought was a snake into a rope. And we do that with people, right? We think it's the seeming enemy. And once we have centered ourselves into the Christ itself, into seeing with eyes that can see beyond the illusion of separation, we can see that we're just making up a story about who they are. Yes? Yes. So that's the beauty of this beautiful book, is it's helping us to reinterpret people's behavior. That they're probably not evil and out to get us, but maybe mistaken and have a misperception about who we are. Yes? Yes, yes. And so with inquiry, with courage, with compassion, we can understand what's going on for the other. Byron Katie told a great story about when she went into a restroom once, and in the restroom, this woman passed her, and she sort of was going fast. And anyway, she went in to do her thing in the stall, and she noticed urine all over the seat. And she got so upset that how dare she leave that for me to clean up? How dare she, treat the building and me that way, right? The righteous indignation. So she goes and gets towels, and she cleans it off, and she does her business, and she flushes the toilet, and there goes all the water back on the toilet seat. So there she was in her righteous indignation, right? Going, oh, I guess she wasn't such a horrible person. Isn't it so interesting how the mind takes us hostage with its storytelling? Yeah. So a good question is always, what am I making this mean? When I'm upset, when I see something and I don't know everything, I always go to, okay, I'm upset. What am I making this experience mean? And then check it out before we holler or accuse or, right? Yeah. So Eckhart Tolle talks about the ego, as I said, and he says the ego's favorite strategy for strengthening itself is to complain about absolutely nothing. Every little complaint is a little story the mind makes up that completely believes it. And whether you complain aloud or only in thought makes no difference. Some egos perhaps don't have as much to identify with as easily, and they only survive on complaining. That is their world. They can't see the good. And they strengthen the ego by giving it more and more power. See how the world is? See how that person is? And they gather evidence. Have you ever been around people like that? Yeah, that is not our Christ itself. That's a wounded ego gone amok. Because who and what we are, when we're standing in the glory of God, when we're standing in our Christhood, there is love, there is joy, there is compassion, there is understanding, there's a spaciousness that I am not disturbed by you because I know who and what I am. I may not like what you say, but I'm not going to buy into your story. I might just say, thank you for sharing. Is that it? Right? Yeah. So, sometimes we believe someone is against us and we make them the matter with us. We know we're experiencing an enemy when we need to be right. We need to have things a certain way. We want to try to control our life circumstances and theirs as well. Been there. That is just not fun at all. And then someone asks, so what's the matter with you? Well, you're the matter with me. This is the mind, sort of taken off. So what am I believing about this person? What am I believing about me? Have I given my power away? Yes. I might be saying I'm not safe, I'm not good enough, I'm not happy, I'm not trusting. But the best question is really, what am I making this mean? How is it possible that I'm seeing an enemy if no one and nothing is against me? And who do I have to be in order to believe that this person is an enemy? I have to believe my shadow self. And who do I have to be in order to stand in the midst of any challenge and know who I am and not shrink? Well, that's the one, the Christed one. That's the one I hope she's with me always. Yes? Yes. That's the one I'm hoping that I nurture and grow and trust that she'll show up as the spiritual warrior, even in the midst of challenges. So there is nothing you can do to destroy the essence of who you are. You could only postpone your awareness to your own magnificence. But it's time, yes? It's time to get out of the shallow. It's time to go into the deep. It's time for us to awaken to our sacred selves. And so if we are to take Jesus and every spiritual master at their word, that the presence of God is never apart from us, no matter how threatening the prevailing winds or circumstances appear, then the importance of finding our way back to the sacred center of our own being cannot be overstated. That's our journey, is back to the sacred center of our own being. What could be more vital to our well-being and for this planet than transformation? Transforming our experience of living in this world. So this is the theme of the Eye of the Storm. Embracing conflict, creating peace. This is the next 6 weeks that we'll be enjoying this wonderful book. And so I invite you to stay for our launch at 12:30 and buy a book and definitely get the study guide. There's a study guide that goes with this, and we'll gift that to you. But I want to end with the eagle in our world knows when the storm is coming. It's approaching, and it knows that it's coming long before it actually breaks. So the eagle will fly to the highest spot and sort of wait for those winds to come. And when the storm hits, it sets its wings so that it rises above the storm. And while that storm rages from below, the eagle soars above it. So it doesn't escape the storm. It uses the storm like we can. We can use life experience to go higher, to be in the deep, in above the line life, as we've been talking about. And so the eagle doesn't get out of life circumstances just like we don't. But it uses life to awaken, to grow, to move beyond the world. And so in our scripture of Isaiah, it says, "Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength, and they will soar on eagle's wings." Just as we are here to do that for the 7 weeks, and more than anything that can be possessed, our wholeness is our divine inheritance. So let us search for our wholeness together. It's really the Holy Grail. So God bless you. Thank you for joining us on this journey of awakening.